Chapter 1. The Funeral That Broke Me. I remember the rain that day more than anything else. It wasn't a downpour. Just that quiet, persistent drizzle that seems like the sky is grieving with you. I stood under a black umbrella, clenching it like it was the only thing anchoring me to the ground. The priest said words I didn't hear. All I could see was the coffin, the flowers, the faces. Daniel, my husband, had died 3 days earlier in a car crash on Highway 9. They said it was instant. A truck swerved. No time to brake. No suffering. At least, that's what they told me. He had left for a business trip in Vermont. He texted me when he landed, told me he'd be back on Sunday. That was the last time I heard from him. Saturday morning, 2 state troopers knocked on my door with solemn eyes and silence that said everything. I collapsed before they even finished the sentence. The weeks after his death were a blur of casseroles, condolences, and dead flowers. People meant well. He was so young, they said. So full of life. At least he didn't suffer. I nodded, smiled, cried. Repeated. But grief doesn't follow logic. And mine didn't come in waves. It hit all at once, like a flood that never drained. Chapter 2. A year of silence. I tried to move forward. I went back to work. I cleared out his closet. I deleted apps that still showed his location, his playlists, our photo memories. Or at least I tried to. I'd wake up some nights and reach for him out of habit. Sometimes I'd hear keys in the door and forget for one blissful second that he was gone. I didn't date. I didn't want to. And I definitely wasn't looking for closure, because, to me, closure sounded a lot like forgetting. It was exactly 1 year and 4 days after the funeral. I remember because it was my friend Tara's birthday. She dragged me out to a rooftop bar in the city. I didn't want to go, but I did, for her. There were too many people, too much noise, and way too many flashing phones. I leaned against the balcony, scrolling through Instagram out of habit, ignoring the chatter around me. Then I saw it. A photo. It popped up under Suggested for You, a travel account I'd never followed. A family of 4 standing on a beach in Santorini. And in the background, blurred but undeniably familiar, was him. Daniel. Same height. Same build. Same crooked smile. Holding a child. Smiling like he never died. Chapter 3. A glitch in the grief. My heart stopped. I mean that literally. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen, zoomed in, zoomed out, rubbed my eyes, blinked twice. It wasn't a perfect shot, the focus was on the couple in front, but there was no mistaking that profile. He was older. A bit tanner. But his arm tattoo, the Roman numerals on his forearm, was visible in the sunlight. Daniel. It had to be. I clicked the account. It belonged to a travel blogger. She was in Greece for a family honeymoon. There were other pictures from the same beach, and in one in the far left corner I saw him again. This time, seated at a table with a woman. Blonde. About my age. And 2 kids. I dropped my phone. Chapter 4. Opening the door I wasn't meant to find. I didn't sleep that night. I went through the entire account, then reverse-searched the images to find anything else. Tags, location check-ins, photo credits. Eventually, I found a tag that led me to the blonde woman's profile. Her name was Lila D. Private account. But her profile picture was her and the same man, Daniel, standing on a pier, arms around each other. There was no hiding it. He was alive. The man I buried. The man whose ashes I scattered into the lake behind my parents' house. I couldn't make sense of it. I scrolled further. Her bio had a link to a photography blog. It had been inactive for 3 years. But in one blog post, she mentioned a man named David. A loving husband. Tech consultant. Father of 2. David. Daniel. Same face. Different life. I don't know when I started crying. I just remember the sound of my own breath, like someone gasping through water. I pulled up our insurance policy. Death certificate. Crash reports. And for the first time in a year, I read it carefully. The body had burned beyond recognition. The ID was made based on the rental car agreement, the hotel check-in, a watch, and a bag with his name. No DNA match. No autopsy. Nothing official. Chapter 5. The Lie Beneath the Ashes. I kept rereading the death certificate. Presumed deceased. That word, presumed, suddenly carried a weight I had never noticed before. My hands trembled as I laid all the documents out on the kitchen table. The crash report. The rental confirmation. The newspaper clipping that called it a tragic, fiery accident that left one man dead and no survivors. I remembered the funeral home saying they couldn't offer an open casket. I'd accepted that without question. Everyone had. But now, I saw it differently. The cremation was fast. So fast. Just 3 days after they declared him gone. No DNA testing. No dental record verification. Only personal items. Things easily planted. And I'd never questioned it. Because I trusted him. Because the idea of doubting your dead husband is something no sane person ever entertains. But now, I felt like a fool. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I couldn't. Not until I had something solid. Something I could point to and say, this is real. I'm not imagining it. So I became someone else. I became the woman with tabs open at 2 a.m., with screenshots buried in folders titled Receipts. I followed every tag, every blurry photo, every side comment on travel blogs and family vlogs until I had built a whole web of lies, and at the center of it was the man I had buried. And her. Lila D. The woman he smiled with. The woman he was alive with. She had 2 children. One looked about 6, the other maybe 2 or 3. A boy and a girl. They had his eyes. I zoomed in on one image from the Santorini post, the beach photo. In the background, Daniel, or David, held the little girl in his arms, tossing her in the air like he used to do with our niece. His form was unmistakable. The joy in his face was almost cruel. Chapter 6. Tracking Ghosts. I hired a private investigator. I told her exactly what I was looking for, and she didn't flinch. Apparently, people faking their own deaths wasn't unheard of, not common, but not impossible. Especially with financial strain, legal issues, or hidden families. She found him in 2 weeks. He was living in North Carolina, under the name David Langley. New social, new license, new life. He had a cozy suburban home in a planned community. HOA newsletters. Grill nights. School pickups. It was all so painfully normal. She sent me photos. Him at the grocery store. Him kissing Lila at a gas pump. Him playing in the front yard with their daughter and son. The man I mourned was now mowing a lawn in khaki shorts and a polo, waving to his neighbors like the ghost of a life he never actually lost. My heart didn't just break again. It imploded. There was no explosion. Just silence. A kind of quiet grief that settled into my bones and made me feel hollow. But I wasn't going to just sit there. I booked a flight. Chapter 7. Face to face with a ghost. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I said I needed a solo weekend trip. Something peaceful. I packed light, wore sunglasses, and checked into a small motel 20 minutes from their home. For 3 days I watched them. I sat in coffee shops and fast food parking lots with tinted windows. I watched their routines. The school drop-offs. The Saturday afternoon farmer's market. The Sunday brunch at a cafe that had a dog's welcome sign and fresh rosemary bread. It made me sick. He was so affectionate. So involved. Holding hands with his wife. Laughing like he hadn't torn my entire world apart. And I noticed something else. No one around him acted like he was hiding. They were all part of it. The baristas knew his name. The mailman waved. The neighbors stopped to chat while he watered the front lawn. He didn't just abandon me. He replaced me. Chapter 8. The Truth Comes Knocking. I didn't plan it exactly. But on the 4th day, I walked up to their front door. It was 4:18 p.m. Lila had just left to pick up the kids. He was home alone. I had timed it. When he opened the door, his face drained of color. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. But I was the one who had mourned him. "Hi, Daniel," I said softly, deliberately using the name he'd erased. He stood there frozen, like his brain couldn't connect what his eyes were seeing. Finally, he whispered, No, this isn't real. Because I thought the same thing when I saw your face in that photo from Greece." Silence. "I buried you," I said, louder now. "I held your mother while she sobbed. I scattered your ashes. And the entire time you were alive, playing house with her." He opened his mouth, closed it, then leaned against the doorframe like the weight of it all had finally landed. "I had to," he finally muttered. "It got too complicated. I didn't know how to fix it." Too complicated. That's what he called obliterating my life. Chapter 9. Beneath the Mask. He let me in. Maybe he knew there was no point in pretending anymore. Or maybe a small part of him, the part that used to love me, felt like he owed me something. An explanation. A confession. Closure at the very least. The house was warm, lived in. Toys scattered across the living room. A faint smell of baby shampoo and cinnamon. Family photos hung on the walls. Lila smiling at the beach. Daniel crouched beside the kids building a sandcastle. Not a trace of me, or the life we'd once had. He poured us both water. I didn't drink mine. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, voice low. "Then why did you fake your death?" There was a long pause. He ran his fingers through his hair, like he still hadn't figured out the answer himself. "I wasn't happy," he said finally. "Not for a long time." I stared at him. "So you vanished. Left me a widow? Let me mourn you for a full year while you played Father of the Year in North Carolina." I know how it sounds. No, Daniel, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't be sitting here trying to justify it. He didn't look up. There were debts. The business, you didn't know everything. I was sinking, and I couldn't drag you down with me. Lila was there. She understood the mess I was in. And instead of telling me the truth, you started a new life like I was a chapter you could just close? Silence. How long was it going on before the accident? Another long pause. 3 years, he said, barely above a whisper. The breath left my lungs. You were cheating on me for 3 years before you died? He nodded, eyes glassy. It wasn't just cheating. I was in love with her. But I still cared about you. That's what made it impossible. I couldn't. I didn't want to break your heart the way my father broke my mom's. So I thought if I disappeared, you'd set me free. I finished, incredulous. You thought faking your death was merciful? I thought it was the cleanest way, he said. No lawyers, no mess. You'd move on. Find someone better. I didn't expect to be found. That last sentence hit harder than it should have. Not because he didn't expect it, but because deep down, maybe he hoped I wouldn't look. And that made me feel disposable. Like a box he could pack away. Chapter 10. The Price of Disappearance. He showed me the garage, where the old SUV he'd rented was still hidden under a tarp. He'd staged the crash outside of Tulsa, switching plates, burning the car, and planting items of his in the wreck. His watch. His ring. A sweatshirt I bought him on our anniversary. The authorities assumed he was incinerated beyond recognition. No body needed. Just ashes and grief. I didn't know you'd cremate me so quickly, he said, like that fact somehow made me part of the lie. I turned to him slowly. Don't you dare make that my guilt to carry. He shut his mouth. He gave me access to a folder in his drawer. Notes, bank statements, proof of identity theft he'd committed against himself to build a new name. It was detailed. He'd been planning this for over a year before the crash. Every dinner we shared. Every morning he kissed my forehead. Every time he said, "You're my whole world," all rehearsed under a script of vanishing. I felt nauseous. Chapter 11. A stranger in my own story. I didn't tell Lila. Maybe I should have. Maybe she deserved the truth too. But standing in the house where her children played, knowing what chaos I could ignite, I didn't have it in me. I wanted to scream, to ruin him, to tell the world what he'd done. But what would that give me? A story on the evening news? 1,000 people gawking at my grief? His children, innocent, blameless, forced to grow up knowing their father was a coward? No, I wouldn't give him that stage. I stood in the doorway as the sun dipped behind the trees. You chose this, I said, and I'm going to let you keep it. But not because you deserve peace. He met my eyes for the first time that afternoon. It's because I do. I left him standing there. The man I buried. The man who never really died. Chapter 12. Epilogue After the Ashes. I didn't cry on the flight home. Not because I wasn't broken. Not because the truth hadn't cracked something wide open in me. But because there was something about knowing, finally knowing, that settled the storm. There's a strange kind of peace in certainty, even when the truth is bitter. Back home, the world hadn't changed, but I had. The neighbors still waved from their porches. The coffee shop still played the same soft jazz. The cashier at the corner store still asked how I was holding up, unaware of the new scars just under my skin. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my sister. Not my therapist. Not the friend who held my hand at Daniel's funeral. It felt too heavy. Like speaking it aloud would make it unreal again, or worse, spark something I couldn't control. So I wrote it down. Every detail. Every word he said. Every look he gave. I filled a journal with it, page by page, not because I needed revenge, but because I needed to remember. I survived. I had survived a marriage built on shadows. I had survived a death that wasn't real. I had survived a betrayal too wild for fiction. And in surviving, I had reclaimed myself. The house still had his photos, not because I couldn't remove them, but because I wanted to decide when. Grief, real or imagined, doesn't work on a schedule. One day, I boxed them all up. Not with anger. Just a readiness. I adopted a dog. A gangly, three-legged mutt named Winston who didn't care who I used to be. I took a road trip alone for the first time in my life. No destination. Just movement. I slept in motels, ate pancakes at diners with sticky menus, and stood beside lakes that shimmered like glass. And in all that silence, I found something I hadn't expected. Forgiveness. Not for Daniel. Not yet. But for myself. For not seeing it sooner. For loving someone who didn't deserve me. For needing answers. For hoping. I mailed the journal to a lawyer in Tulsa with a note. If he tries to fake his death again, maybe this time someone will see through it. And that was it. No fanfare. No trial. Just a line drawn in permanent ink. I was walking downtown 6 months later when I saw it, a small bookstore with a chalkboard outside that read, "Rewrite your ending." I walked in. The woman behind the counter had laugh lines and eyes that told stories. She handed me a flyer for a local writing group. I almost laughed. But I took it. And that week I went. I told my story to strangers who didn't look away. And I wrote. Not about Daniel. Not about death or lies or flames in Tulsa. But about her, the woman who buried a husband who wasn't dead, who traveled across states to find the truth, and who came home to build something real. Me. That woman was me.